Hi, thanks for joining me for my talk. This is going to be talking about web forms and specifically all of the ways that you can use them to improve your user's experience through your website. There are the standard ways that you can use web forms, but we're also going to be talking about all of the different ways that you can use this tool to help improve their experience beyond just standard data collection. My name is Rachel Hart. I'm the Solutions Analyst at Digital Services Georgia. I am also the UX UI designer. These roles all sort of go together. So I am the person who is sort of behind the visual display of content on our websites, as well as helping with some of that strategic piece of thinking through what makes sense. And so when it comes to web forms, I will take a look at what is currently working, what might need to change, and what are the best ways to use this tool for helping our users. So today we're going to be talking about all the different ways that you can use web forms. I'll go through some form best practices and then help us create a plan and what you need to be thinking through before even building the form on your site. So let's get started. So why use web forms? Like I said, this is, you can use it for contact pages, but of course you can use it for so much more also. And so starting at the very basic, these are some ways that you might think of using web forms right off the bat. So you might use a web form when the user needs to ask you a general question, submit feedback or complaints, register an event, maybe request official documents or photos, or any of these sort of basic ways of getting in contact with you as an agency. And making this a little bit more sophisticated, you can also send the results from your GovHub web form directly to a customer relationship management tool for more complex analysis and secure data transfer. So think of this as an alternative to an email notification. If you're doing some additional processing in another system, then you can use this to automate entering that data, rather than needing to get the form results in an email and then entering that manually. So that's sort of the basic. And of course, this is also not just for data collection. I know, crazy. You might have figured that out from the title of the talk. So what do I even mean by that? So beyond data collection, some of the ways that you can use web form might be to help users figure out their next steps or to navigate a complex process, maybe just to gather customized information. So helping them navigate through something that they interact with. So it can really personalize this process for them, because web forms are the way that they can actually give the site feedback and the site can respond to that. So, for example, the Department of Human Services came to us asking if we could use web forms as an assessment tool. So this is for the Division of Aging Services website. And it is meant as a tool to help older adults figure out their level of risk in terms of social isolation. So they have these 6 prompts asking how many relatives do you see or hear from, how many do you feel at ease talking with about private matters? And so based on their answer, each prompt, they'll get a different score, and then you add up all of those scores to get your total result. And in the end, if you have a total score of 13 or more, then the tool determines that you are not at risk for social isolation. But if your final score is a 12 or less, then at that point, it determines that you are at risk for social isolation. So this is not something that you would necessarily think of using a web form for. The people at DHS, they did actually come to us thinking, well, maybe this is a tool that we can use for this. And I'm really glad that they did, because it absolutely is something that we can use web form for. So from there, from that PDF, we actually went ahead and built this form for them. And so as you go through, you answer the question appropriately, selecting from the available answers, and then you click for your results. This came up with a score of 15. Because this is not considered at risk, then that's where it ends. Okay, so let's go back to the form, and this time we'll fill it out with some lower numbers. And so based on these answers, our score comes to 6. And so this is considered actually at risk. And so at this point, because this is at risk, we want to give the user an opportunity to actually get in contact with someone. So that's just one example of taking something that could be done in a PDF or on just a standard web page, and actually turning it into an interactive process that helps guide the user through this experience and ending up with something that is really going to be helpful for them. All right, so that's sort of an introduction to what are the different ways that you can use Webform. So let's get into some best practices and talk about getting what you need without annoying your users. So starting off, only ask for what you need. Question everything. Second guess everything. Do you actually need the answer to that prompt? Or is it something that might just be a nice to have? So ask yourself, do you really need that information? Do you need it? Why do you need it? What are you planning to do with it? And do you need it now? Or is this something that you can get more information on later on in the process? For each field on the form, ask yourself these questions and make sure that you really do actually need what you're asking for. Because remember, every question has a cost. So keep it simple. So I have some do's and don'ts here. You do want to make sure that you have a purpose and a plan for every field. You want to label everything clearly and concisely. So, for example, if you're asking for their personal contact information, and if it's very clear that that's what you're asking for, then you don't need to say your name, your email address. Simplify it as much as possible. Make it as quick and easy to scan as you can. Name, phone, email. Very quick and to the point. And then when possible and reasonable, give them options. And I'll talk more about that later. So now for the don'ts. Don't ask for anything that you don't need. Only focus on what you absolutely need. And so with that in mind, your form should mostly be made up of required fields. If you don't need it, then why is it on the form? Don't collect sensitive, personally identifiable information. So PII could include things like their name, their email address, their phone number, all these things that can help you identify a person. Of course, that's going to be needed in most cases, but the sensitive PII is what will actually put the user's identity at risk. So this is things like their credit cards and their social security numbers. You don't want to be collecting that through GovHub's web forms. The platform is just not built to collect that sensitive information. And also, you don't want to show too much all at once. And again, that's something that I'll talk more about in a minute. All right, next tip, you want to make sure that you're using the right field type. Right off the bat, when you are selecting an element to add to your form, you see these basic elements up at the top: text area, text field, checkbox, sure. Those are great in some instances, but there might be times that something else is more appropriate. And once you open this up, you're going to see a lot. And so let's talk about what to look at when selecting an element. So you're not going to use just text fields. We have all sorts of fields that are going to be better for specific purposes and work better for accessibility, for autofill, and to make sure that the field has in place certain requirements and validation to ensure that your user is sending you the right data. So for example, let's talk about the date field. We have a specific element called date that you can select when building your form. So when you are setting up your date, this gives you specific criteria that you can apply to this field that you can't do with something simple like a text field. You can check a box to use a date picker. And so this is going to show a calendar that they can select the date from rather than just inputting numbers. You can also set what the date format is going to look like. And you can put certain criteria around when the date is. So this is what that field looks like to the user. They'll see the field, they can type in it, and they can also click the little calendar icon. If they do that, then this calendar pops up. And because of the specifications around what the date can be, you can see that that changes the display of the dates within this calendar. Everything after today is grayed out. Make sure that you provide options when available. This is going to help you standardize your results, and it's also going to make it easier for users to fill out the form. So for example, checkboxes. Checkboxes are great for when they might need to select more than one option. Radio buttons are a great option for when it should be a single selection. And you can use a drop-down if you need a single selection from the user, but maybe there are several options to choose from. Also consider using composite elements. So these are pre-grouped and formatted fields that are meant to collect specific types of information. So, for example, an address or a name or a telephone, something that brings together multiple fields all in one group. So for example, let's talk about address. You can use the advanced address field, which is a composite element, to put together all of these different fields as one item. So fields are formatted already to collect the correct type of data. So we have the street address, the city, the state, and the zip code. And you can see with the state, that's a drop-down. If you click on it, then you have the full list of states. And so when you're building this form, those states are already in there. You don't need to manually add all of those as the form creator. This can save time building the form using composite elements. I want to be careful because the screenshot that you see here is just one piece of this element. You can see that there are a lot of fields to look through that you might possibly include, a lot of decisions that you need to make in terms of what is actually going to be best to include in this element. But it can save time in terms of the states. So you saw that on the last screen. We had all 50 states and a couple other, like DC, included in this dropdown. And as an editor, you don't need to add those all manually. So that will save you some time there. And then also, it's going to display your collected data in an easy-to-read format. This can show up differently depending on your context. If you're looking at a confirmation email with the submission results, then for this advanced address field, you can see it shows it as an address. So rather than saying this is the street, this is the state, this is the city, all as different lines, it puts it together as a complete address, since an email is meant for a human to actually look at and read. And if you're on the back end of your website and you're looking at your submission results, then again, it's going to show it in this readable format. But if you download your results into a spreadsheet, then we know that maybe you need to sort through the results differently. And so at that point, it's going to actually break out each of those different fields into a different column so that you can sort through the list as needed. Make sure that you're showing one piece at a time. We don't want to overwhelm our users by having them see just too much all at once. And so there are a couple ways that this can come about. For one, you can have multiple pages in your form. And when you're doing that, you want to have each page focused on a specific topic. So for example, this is a form used to collect complaints. So on the first page, you have some acknowledgements. You can check those off. And then you'll go to the next page where you fill out your personal information. The page after that, they're going to put in details of the complaint and so forth. And so you can see each page is very focused on one type of information. And because of the way that this is built within GovHub, then a user will see, oh, I have 4 pages to fill out, and then page 5 is going to be the completion. And they know what type of information is going to be collected on each of these pages to set their expectations accurately. Another way that we can reveal information piece by piece is with conditional logic. And so this is where you show follow-up fields or information based on the user's response as they go through the form. So in this example, this is applying for a film tax credit audit. And so they're trying to figure out how much is the fee going to be. So that fee is going to change based on the production costs and based on who is performing this audit. So, for example, you can answer the first question. Okay, there's still nothing there because we need both pieces of information. Once you fill out the second question, then the fee actually shows up in this box. And the user can see, okay, this is how much I'm going to owe based on the production costs and who is performing this audit. And then if they need to change an answer, the fee adjusts. You want to make sure to encourage self-service. Contacting you should always be the user's last resort. They want to get the information as quickly as possible, and you, as the agency, want to not have to respond to them, if possible. You have other things to do. You have information on your website, and so if we can guide them to that existing information, then it's going to make it easier for everyone. So if you have multiple ways for the user to get this information, then make sure that you're ordering the page in a way that makes it faster for the users and more manageable for you. Show the multiple forms of contact in the right order to achieve this goal. So for example, if you have an automated chat, that can maybe go at the top. If you have links to existing information, it can pop up next. Then maybe include your contact form so that they can send you written information. And at the very bottom, that's where you're going to want to include a phone number or an office address, anything that's going to be more hands-on. Make sure that you're saving that for the very last. All right, so we've gone through some best practices. We've talked about what can happen in a web form. And so let's talk about actually putting together a plan for a form. So this is a before page. At the top, you can see that there are some links to some other specific forms. We have the COVID-19 hotline with a phone number. We have another phone number for the Office of Constituent Services. We have some more links going off to contacting senators and representatives. And then scrolling down, this is where we get to the form. And then down here at the bottom, they can actually provide the details of their concern, and they can select who or what this relates to. All right, so that's the before. There's a lot going on that page. A user seeing this might get a little bit overwhelmed and want to just stop right here. Of course, we're trying to do a lot with this form, right? We're trying to provide for a lot of different possible needs. This is the Governor's Office of Constituent Services, so it's kind of the hotline for all of Georgia's government agencies. But how can we make this better? So start with goals. What are your goals? Your goals might be to reduce phone calls and office visits, and it's going to be to collect enough information from the user to take the next step forward. What are your users' goals? Their goal is not to contact you. Their goal is to get an answer to their question and to know what they need to do next. And then what do you really need? Again, so this is going back to earlier, question everything. Do you actually need that information? So for example, think of asking about sex or gender. Is that what you really need? Or are you actually asking for their title and pronouns? Do you just need to know how to refer to them? And then consider the format. Is this form for data collection? Is it maybe a guide or a wizard to help users find information that already exists? Or is it some sort of combination of the two? And then you're going to start to map it out. So this is where we zoom out and take a look at the whole picture. Make a list before you start actually building this form. Think about Is there any other way that users can get this information? So does this already exist online? Is this form actually going to be the best way to get an answer? And also start to consider, what is the data that you need? List out what all it is that you're planning on including. Then you can start to group these items and figure out what is the best order for them. Going back to what is going to be the least strain on both you and your users, think about maybe putting a chat at the top, and then having the web form, and then ending with phone numbers. You can also start to think about what answers will affect what other fields they need to fill out. If we move the related agency or topic up higher in the form, then that can help us figure out what to show them next. We had all of these links that were separate, going off to other forms or off to other agencies. Well, maybe we can help that be part of the process. They select what it is that they're talking about, and then at that point, we show them these links going elsewhere, or we collect their information. And then now that you have this sort of big picture idea, you can start to figure out what are the actual elements that is going to be best to create this data. Some final considerations. Think about who should be receiving these submissions. And this can be conditional also. So if someone is responding saying that they're interested in a particular topic, and if someone at your agency is the best person to answer questions about that particular topic, then you can have the form submissions go directly to that person. And for another topic, if there's another person, then those submissions can go to them. Think about how you're planning to respond to these submissions. So this can also inform, again, what goes into your form. Should you be collecting phone numbers, or should you be collecting email addresses? Maybe both. Consider what's next for the user. So they're going to see a confirmation page when they finish filling out the form. Maybe you have some more information on your website about the topic that they're asking about. And maybe you can provide some sort of timeline for them to expect when they should hear back from you. And of course, when should the form point to existing information instead of ending in a submission? It's not the user's goal to contact you, and it's not your goal to hear from them. It's the goal is to get the answer and help the user just move on with their day and get their task done. And finally, make sure that you thoroughly test the form. Make sure that depending on what they select, that the email is actually sending to the right people. So if you haven't taken a look at your web forms since your site migrated to GovHub, then maybe just do a few tests. Make sure that emails are actually sending correctly. If you have any conditional logic built into the form, or if you have multiple pages, just take a walk through and make sure that everything is working as expected. And so after going through this process, this is where we ended with this form. So we start off with the chatbot. This is all automated. This requires no manual oversight. Scrolling down the page, then we get to the actual form. So we can start off by selecting what is the topic. And based on the answer there, then we can maybe provide a little information and then collect the user data for if they do actually want to fill out a form and get in touch with someone. They can select maybe a different topic, so food stamps, for example. And so we have a way to get directly in touch with DFACS, and if not, then you can fill out the form. Or maybe you want to get in touch with the governor's office. So there are some different options for why you might do that. And we have another follow-up question with radio buttons for that. And then down at the very bottom, we have the phone numbers. So this form, there's still a lot going on, but it's organized in a way that the user can go through it piece by piece, and the information shows up as they need it. And so where does this leave us? This is for both existing forms that you have on your website and also maybe some new ones. Take a look at what forms you have now. You probably have a contact form. Maybe you have some registration forms. Maybe you have forms to collect specific type of information like feedback on something or complaints. take a look at these and see if it's following these best practices. And then also maybe consider other opportunities. Do you have complex processes that your users might benefit from being guided through? So here's some key takeaways. Consider the user's true goals. They are not trying to contact you. That is not what they want. They want to get the information that they need in order to get their task done. Keep it simple. Question everything. Do you actually need that information, and do you need it now? And finally, make a plan. We can get excited to just jump right into the system and put something together, but take a step back and think about it holistically as part of the user's journey. This form is just one piece in how they're interacting with you and your agency and your website and all of the other information related to this particular topic. And so think of it from that holistic perspective. Now, I know that I've gone through a lot of information. Be on the lookout for a coming blog post where I can highlight some of these best practices and help you out going forward. And of course, whenever you have questions about web forms, feel free to open a support request and we will get back with you. Anything, especially that is maybe more complicated technically. You saw earlier that we just got a PDF from DHS, and we worked with that to help them create this web form for an interactive process for their users. So definitely use us as your resource. We are happy to help and make your job easier and make the user's experience as good as possible. Thank you so much, and I will be happy to take your questions.